Okay, I see it. Okay. So my learning teaching experience for this week, I wanted to focus on three different main parts that I got out of the reading and also just from my own personal reflection based on the reading. Um, just a little summary before I start. I felt that all too often we experience lesson talks or presentations that fail to make their point, and in the reading, we were able to learn better ways to engage our audience and to better help them learn and grow, as well as allowing ourselves as family life educators to learn and grow. So I chose to focus on three aspects, and those were nurture, engage, and leadership, all of which can be applied to us as educators and to the audience members. So, starting with nurture, in chapter 4 of the text, we were able to learn that nurturing plays a huge role in regards to the educator and to participant relationship. Right at the beginning of the chapter, they compare it to a child-parent relationship, and with the CDT theory chart that's at the very beginning, we learn that through the application of the component displacement theory, we can better deliver the material that we have prepared through different ways of executing it. Those ways can really make or break how the audience is responding to what we're teaching. Beyond that theory, we were also able to learn that when we include stories into our lesson material, this allows for the audience members to better connect with the material that we're teaching. And this helped me gain a better perspective because I reflected on what we're learning in our child and family advocacy class, which is what we just went over last week. How the story of us, or the story of self, us, and now, I think that's the order, really helps the audience to engage more personally than they would without a story. So in that aspect, stories can really be a big component and helper to our material that we're teaching. And then I also included to maintain a balance between the participant to educator relationship. We want to make sure that both people have time to speak, and it's not just all instructor and it's not just all open for discussion. I think there needs to be a balance between the two, so both can learn from one another. I included a quote that I found in the reading, and it said that the leader should bring expert knowledge as well as facilitation skills. The learners bring their own discoveries, creativity, expertise, and wealth of experience. And then it included at the very end that when both work together, more learning is facilitated. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think that both people need to be prepared, one being prepared to come learn and the other prepared to teach. And in both ways, we end up doing both. So the participant can teach and learn, and so can the educator. And the next subject was engage. And just as we have learned to nurture the relationship, we are also able to learn better ways to engage participants in the material being taught. The principles of nurture and engagement really go hand in hand. In fact, if we can't learn how to better nurture the relationships present during a lesson, we can fall victim to common mistakes. And that was one of the questions, the reading reflective questions that's always in the material after the reading portion. And that question was the one that started with most likely you have taught in some setting, and what mistakes have you made, and based on what you know about yourself from previous teaching experiences, what can you do better to avoid those mistakes? And so I included the part in the reading where it teaches that we need to have relevance, respect, and participation. And relevance was referring to the fact that we need to remember that everyone is tied to a family in some way. And respect refers to that we need to model the respect that we invite participants to apply to their own families. So we can't just come in and teach and expect and be rude and vulgar or whatever and expect them to gain anything from it. they're not going to be able to apply anything to their own family life if we aren't giving them the respect that we want them to take away. And then the last one was participation. And this said that it was more than book learning, it was personally engaging with our own audience. And I think that is very important as educators to personally connect with your audience. All the teachers I've ever had who actually address me as an individual and not as a student in, I don't want to say belittling way, but when they take the time to develop a relationship with their students, I've just noticed that I'm able to learn a lot more and listen a lot more carefully than I do when the teacher is just taking the persona of, oh, I'm the teacher, you're the student, so just listen to what I have to say. And then as we practice engaging our audience, we can avoid asking poor questions or interrupting because we may become uncomfortable, which is something that I have noticed I tend to do when I teach. I just start to ramble when I get uncomfortable, and that I feel like interrupts opportunities for students to learn because you aren't allowing that conversation to start when you're just rambling up there about things that you aren't fully knowledgeable of. And I included examples to my own lesson plan for this class. And my lesson, or the subject that I'm covering, is the importance of family time. And so I want to teach my students how important it is to experience that time rather than to just make it and create it. And something that was included in the text was to think of how rather than what we are teaching. And I thought that just directly applied to the things that I'm teaching in my own lesson plan. And then I also included an example of, for church members, when we are taught by the Spirit, we're able to learn a lot more than when we just show up and listen to a lesson and don't really give any second thought to it. And then the last principle that I wanted to cover was leadership. And I just thought that our relationships and amount of engagement that we create between educator and participants all depends on how we facilitate learning through our leadership. It's the skills and tools that we use as we work with diverse audiences that allow us to become strong family life educators. The leadership of the teacher can, I feel like, really influence the audience in a negative way or a positive way, and obviously we want that to be a positive way. So I included that we need to plan our lessons with structure, links, summaries, and answers to questions, and that was included in Chapter 6 of our reading. And then we also need to include a skilled dialogue into our leadership and lesson plans. And there was another quote that I in the lesson plan that I created for this learning teaching interaction that says, "The belief that one must have information about others before one can be culturally competent is itself a cultural artifact." And so with the skilled dialogue in that little excerpt, it was talking about we need to be familiar with all cultures that are around us and not just the one that we may assume we're teaching to. As leaders and educators, we need to practice individual communication with one-on-one participants and just the communication standards in general. We need to respect everyone. Our lessons need to be action-oriented, I think. Including the participants is a main part of being a good leader. And then we need to also include time orientation and work ethic and family structure into our lessons as we address these audience members, because there's so many factors that play into how well the things we're teaching are going to be perceived and understood. And I included some questions in my outline. One was, what ways have I been a strong leader in school, community, or in the home, or have anyone been? And then another one was, how have those experiences helped me in learning necessary skills to facilitate learning? And then just to close, I feel that all good leaders that have ever existed are those who know their audiences and act upon their needs and wants. Similarly, we as educators must learn our audiences and put our efforts towards getting to know them. Audience first equals a great leader. And I just included examples that teachers who put the needs of the students first before their own are able to develop a relationship with them. And then parents who take the time to teach their children through love and patience are able to be great leaders in the home and have their children respect them and follow them. So that's it.
All right, that was good.
Thanks.
Are we supposed to comment on each other's, or?
I'm not. I'm
know.
sure it wouldn't hurt, but I just really didn't. I don't know.
Okay, well, I think you did a good job at using some of the information from like Family 460, kind of integrating that into your lesson. And I just wrote down some notes that you know, some of the stuff that you put in your learning teaching thing. Anyway, and it just seemed to flow really well and
Oh, good.
prepared. I thought, you know, you seemed really prepared. So
Thank you.
good job.
Thanks.
All right, so should I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So when there's an overall goal selection for a workshop, then content and establishing what we would like the participants to learn, we must then consider the teaching skills. There are several approaches to teaching family relationships. For this learning teaching experience, I'm going to spotlight many approaches that can effectively involve the participants, along with some of my personal experiences. So the first one is stories from our lives and others ground us and help us make sense of our lives. And in my Family 460 class, I found about telling personal stories about yourself to your audience has an emotional quality. So I know that when I'm hearing somebody speak, or I'm at, you know, I'm the learner and the teacher's giving a personal experience about themselves, my attention seems to, you know, perk up, and I'm always kind of interested in what they're saying. And, you know, it's more personal. So you feel more connected to that person. In the Teaching No Greater Call, it says that stories can capture the interest of the learner. And basically that's just what I said, that it just captures your interest and your attention. In a speech that was given by Marsha Barlow in my Family 460 class, she said that a narrative plus empirical data equals persuasion. And she's talking about narrative as in the story, a story of us, the story of self, the story of us, the story of now, and just, you know, using personal experiences plus your data that you have to back it up, can persuade somebody. You know, if somebody doesn't really know for sure if they're understanding or believing what you're saying, or if they don't know which way they want to go, you could persuade somebody by using a narrative and the data. And also using reframing, which was part of Marsha Barlow's lecture, to change the way that your participants view a particular topic or issue. And that is putting it in a way that they understand it, and that's a more just easier to understand and a more persuasive way of putting it. And one of my personal examples of using, when you use stories that help people, when you're using stories that people can relate to, it just reminded me of a story that I told when I was in my ward a long time ago. I was Relief Society president, and I was speaking about visiting teaching. And so I told a story of my experience with visiting teaching with a friend, and how, you know, she was totally inactive, and just how we actually became friends. And I felt like somehow I made a little bit of a maybe impression on her, and years later now she's gotten active in the church, and it probably wasn't at all because of me, but I feel like using that experience of visiting teaching may have somehow persuaded people to understand that visiting teaching is important, and that it, you know, you can make a difference in somebody's life. And then the next one is narrative strategy, which was something I learned in my Family 460 class, and it was a strategy that was given by Marshall Gantz, and it's the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. And the story of self gives authenticity, you know, that it's something real that actually happened to you, and like I just spoke of, it's more personal and more relatable for your audience. And then the story of us is how we, together with our audience, can accomplish something or learn something, you know, like you're learning it along with them, and you're not perfect. You're not sitting there telling everybody what they should do, but you want to be able to do it as well and learn it as well, and you have room for improvement as well. And then the story of now is, you know, what can you do right now, and what are you going to do right now to change or to apply whatever you're learning into your life. And then the next is engaging the participants. By engaging students and compelling stories that impart important material, teachers reach students both emotionally and biochemically, increasing the potential for rich learning experience. And this is from an article that I found online. It's called Empirically Based Teaching Methodologies to Teach Family Life Education Topics Effectively. And then it also says, personal stories from the teacher's own experience can help create and solidify strong bonds between educator and student, while stories of pure fiction may stimulate imagination. And then a story-filled classroom also encourages students to relate their own stories, whether factual or fictional. So if you're telling as a teacher, telling a personal story about yourself or somebody that you know, you might inspire the participants in the class to share a personal story. And they might be more inclined to share a personal story, you know, if you're doing it as well, and other people. And then methods used to engage participants. The first one is leading group discussions. When you present a thought-provoking question or statement, that could bring up a discussion. And this is from the book, Family Life Education, our textbook that we're using. And then the second one is structuring. So limit or redirect discussion when things are wandering. Sometimes things will get off topic or totally off, you know, track, and it's up to us as presenters to get it back on track on the subject. And then linking, identify common elements in the participants' comments and questions. And that's something I think that takes talent, is to be able to link people's ideas together and how it all goes back to what you're talking about. Sometimes that can be hard to do. And then summarizing, emphasize important details. And then answering questions, try and get the group to answer the questions instead of you're like lecturing and you're asking a question, and then, you know, sometimes you have to pause and let people have a chance to answer the questions instead of us as instructors answering it for them. And then a fishbowl helps participants to learn empathy and understanding of each other's point of view. And buzz groups, several small groups to discuss issues among themselves. And that also gets the participants engaged in, you know, just engaged in what you're talking about, and, you know, could keep them awake and just actively listening. And then the last thing is from an article that I found it's called Using Stories to Teach, How Narrative Structure Helps Students Learn. And it's called the AI model, and it's attention, interact, apply, and invite. And some of these things are things that we've kind of already gone over, but attention would be catching your audience's attention maybe at the very beginning, so that they're prepared to be taught. And that's something that I'm going to show a video at the very beginning of my workshop. And it's called It's Not About the Nail. And it's kind of funny and humorous and
I love that. I've seen that.
about communication. So hopefully that will catch people's attention. And then the second one is to interact and introduce the workshop and use interaction methods. One of the things that in my workshop, we're going to take the love languages quiz. So that will get the participants talking to each other and about the results that they get, and it'll bring a discussion into the room. And then I'm also going to ask the participants how they can use their spouse's love language to communicate. So that will promote interaction, having that discussion. And then the next one is apply. Spend as much time as possible on applying the principles being taught. Ask the participants how they can learn new skills to change their lives and relationships. This is something that I'll do in the workshop to help kind of commit them to have a plan of how they're going to apply the things that they've learned in the workshop into their marriage and their communication in their relationships. And then the last one is invite the participants to use the love language of their spouse to enhance their relationship with them. And I'll challenge the participants to make a goal of working on communicating with their spouse in their love language. Instead of just, doing the quiz is really nice, but if they just take it home and throw it away or, don't even look at it, then they're not going to remember what they need to do and work on. And so it's something to help them remember that they need to work on it every day. And then that is it for my learning, teaching, interaction number 2.
I loved that. You drew so many different outside sources in, and I should have done more of those. But I liked the ones that you pulled in, and I think it's funny that we're in the same class, so it's easier for me to understand what you're talking about because I use those ones too. But it's I like that we have that class also with this class because I feel like I'm able to better understand my job as a educator because we're learning how to advocate in that other class.
Yeah,
so
they really go together. It's helpful. I found that a lot of the things, for this particular lesson were helpful to use.
Yeah, especially, yeah. Well, because you even mentioned reframing, and that was from Marsha Barlow's talk, and then I think it may not go hand in hand, but I think it can be compared to the linking aspect that we learned of in the text. It's just a different way of, I feel like, involving your audience. So you reframe it to allow them to think differently about the topic at hand, but then you link. I don't know, they both just require a certain level of skill, like you mentioned. I feel like it takes a lot of talent that I need to find somewhere to know how to do this because it seems hard, but hopefully I can do it.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just stop the broadcast. But
okay.